They say a baby once floated down a river in a basket of reeds, sealed with pitch. A gardener pulled him from the water, raised him as his own, and no one imagined that boy would grow up to change the world. Whether the tale was fact or legend, people believed it, because it carried a truth. He came from nothing, and rose higher than any man before him. This is the story of Sargon. Born around 2300 BCE in Mesopotamia, a land of canals, fertile fields, and walled cities locked in endless rivalry. Kish, Uruk, Ur, Lagash, each claimed power. Each carved their victories into clay tablets. Here the floods of the rivers decided everything. A good season meant abundance. A failed one could bring a city to its knees. In this world, the gods were not only worshipped, they were weapons of politics. A king's word meant little unless the great temple of Nippur gave its blessing. To march a captive through Enlil's gate was to prove the gods had chosen you. Armies could win battles, but shrines made kings. This was the ground Sargon first walked. A world where power shifted like water in the canals. Most men lived and died inside the walls of their city. He did not. He was a boy with no pedigree, in a land where bloodline meant everything. To be nameless was to be invisible. No family to protect you. No inheritance to claim. No reason for others to respect you. That made his climb unlikely, but unforgettable. The records tell us little of his youth, except one detail that mattered. Before he was king, he was the cupbearer of Kish. To modern ears, that sounds like a servant. In those courts, it meant far more. The man who carried the king's cup stood within arm's reach of power every day. He was trusted with the seal, trusted with the king's drink, trusted to know when to stay silent and when to speak. This was where Sargon learned. He learned how a single phrase could open a road and another could close it. He learned that men who shouted loyalty one day could turn bitter the next if their storehouses ran empty. He saw how fragile power became when it rested only on words. His master was King Ur-Zababa of Kish. The chronicles give us little of their bond, but later fragments hint at tension. One tale says Ur-Zababa dreamed that Sargon would one day eclipse him. Fear makes kings reckless. Some say he tried to send Sargon to his death by ordering him to carry a message to Lugal-Zaggisi, the powerful king of Uruk. To deliver such a message was almost a death sentence. If Lugal-Zaggisi suspected treachery, Sargon would be executed. If he stayed loyal to Ur-Zababa, he risked being crushed between two kings. What matters is this: Sargon broke from Kish. Whether through rebellion, betrayal, or chance, he seized the moment. If he failed, he would be executed. If he won, he would be king. He chose to risk everything. From that step on, the rules changed. He was no longer the man pouring another king's wine. He was a man reaching for a throne. The timing was sharp. Lugal-Zaggisi had already drawn many cities under his banner. He styled himself King of Sumer, chosen of the goddess Inanna. To most, it looked like unity at last. To Sargon, it looked like a challenge. We do not know exactly how Kish fell into his hands, whether by force or by rebellion. But soon he had an army. He marched on Uruk. The walls had stood for centuries, but walls mean little if morale breaks. When the armies clashed, Lugal-Zaggisi was captured. Later texts give us the image. Sargon leading him in a collar, paraded like an animal. But Sargon did not stop there. He brought him to Nippur, to Enlil's great temple, the place that decided kingship. At the gate, he showed his rival to the people. Imagine the scene. Priests weighing which side looked like the future. Workers whispering that the gods had abandoned Uruk. However they reacted, one truth was plain. By dragging his enemy through that sacred gate, Sargon declared that the gods now stood with him. And he moved quickly to make it last. He placed loyal men in priesthoods. Most famously, he sent his daughter Enheduanna to as high priestess of the moon god Nanna. Through her hymns to Inanna, his dynasty tied itself to the gods, in words that outlived his battles. The lesson Sargon had learned as Cupbearer was now in motion. Legitimacy was never given. It had to be taken, and once taken, it had to look as if it had always been yours. With Lugal-Zaggisi broken, the horizon widened. Sumer was his. But the rivers flowed outward, and Sargon was not the kind of man to stop where the water ended. From Sumer, his armies turned west. First came Mari, a wealthy city of merchants and palaces. When it fell, its markets grew silent. Merchants who once filled the streets with noise now watched as Akkadian soldiers carried their treasures away. Then came Ebla, where cedar beams and silver ingots were seized. Materials once used to build temples, now folded into an empire. Later inscriptions boast that he washed his weapons in the sea. In other words, he claimed to have reached the Mediterranean. Maybe the details were stretched, but the message was clear. Sargon ruled from one sea to the other, from the Mediterranean to the Persian Gulf. But empires are not built on victories alone. Conquests collapse if nothing holds them together. Sargon knew this. While his armies marched, his officials worked. He placed governors, often family or men he trusted, across the new lands. He tied religion to his dynasty. Enheduanna's hymns to Inanna did more than praise a goddess. They told people that the gods had chosen Sargon's line to rule. Akkad itself became the center. The city has never been found, but texts describe it as a hub where grain from the south and metals from the mountains were gathered. It was not only a capital of soldiers, but of scribes and storehouses. Without records and food, no army lasts long. Trade stretched farther than swords. Inscriptions say ships came from Dilmun, Magan, even Melucha, the Indus Valley. Picture the harbor. Sailors from distant lands speaking strange tongues, unloading copper from Oman, beads from the Indus, maybe spices never seen before. Whether or not every ship truly docked at Akkad, the claim mattered. It showed how Akkad saw itself, not just an empire of warriors, but an empire of harbors. And still, soldiers remained the backbone. Tradition says 5,400 men ate bread daily before him. Even if the number was more symbol than fact, it meant Sargon kept a standing army, something rare in the earlier city-states. But the wider he spread, the more pressure built. Conquered peoples do not stay quiet. Priests in old cities still whispered old prayers. Governors remembered their own ambitions. Farmers watched their grain hauled away for soldiers they had never seen. Imagine being that villager, watching another season's harvest loaded onto carts, fields trampled under marching feet. What felt like glory in Akkad was hardship in the provinces. Later chronicles say all the lands revolted against him. Maybe it was exaggerated, but the truth was close. Revolt was constant. Sargon answered the only way he knew, by marching. One tradition claims he fought 34 battles in a single year. Whether or not the number is real, it captures the grind. The king in his 50s or 60s, still strapping on armor, still riding with his men, still forcing cities back into line. Think about that. A man who once poured another king's wine now spent his last years chasing rebellion after rebellion. He had been the hunter. Now he was the firefighter, stamping out flames across his empire. His body carried scars, his back was stiff, but he kept riding. The victories came, but each one cost him. Farmers cursed the levies. Villages grew bitter at the loss of food. To the east, Elam stirred again. To the north, restless cities tested Akkad's grip. Even in the heartland, murmurs spread. For a time, he held it together. Each victory brought another season, but it wore him down. Later texts say that even in death, he could not rest. It sounds less like poetry than memory. His last years were not for expansion, but for holding on. When he died, his sons Rimush and Manishtushu inherited Akkad. They also inherited his troubles. They fought rebellions and crushed uprisings, but the cycle never ended. A century later, Sargon's dynasty fell to the Gutians, tribes from the Zagros Mountains who swept into Mesopotamia. And yet his shadow stayed. Later, kings of Babylon and Assyria looked back to him as a model. They copied his titles, his boasts, his claim to rule from the upper sea to the lower sea. Hammurabi, centuries later, styled himself King of the Four Quarters, a title echoing Sargon's words. Even the story of the baby in the basket lived on, echoing in myths of power born from nothing. His city, Akkad, disappeared. Archaeologists have never found its ruins. Somewhere between Baghdad and Samarra, the first imperial capital still lies buried. The city is gone, but its name remains. The Akkadian Empire, the Akkadian language, written into history itself. And Enheduanna, his daughter, left hymns and prayers that survive today. She is the first known author to sign her name. Through her words, we can still hear the ambitions of a dynasty that tied itself to the gods. For people of his own time, his reign was both triumph and burden. To some, he was the chosen king who brought unity. To others, he was the tyrant who drained their fields and demanded their sons. To later ages, he was the pioneer, the first man to dream of empire. His legacy was not gentle, but it was unforgettable. And if his story leaves one truth, it is this: empire is never finished. Every mile you take must be defended. Every city you capture must be fed. Every god you claim is a god someone else believes you stole. Sargon's life showed that power is not a prize you hold once. It is a fire you must feed every day. A baby, a cupbearer, a conqueror, an emperor. From the riverbank to the throne of the world, he proved that a man with no name could carve one that lasted forever. But he also proved the cost. The higher you climb, the more the world waits to pull you back down.